Imagine learning that the so-called ordinary bride who entered St. Paul's Cathedral in 1981 was anything but ordinary. Picture discovering that the reserved young woman in her ivory wedding dress possessed ancestral connections more ancient, more authentic, and arguably more regal than those of the Windsor family she was joining. The global audience believed they were witnessing a modern fairy tale. The reality was far more profound. Centuries of history were converging. The bride climbing into that carriage wasn't simply joining the royal family. She was restoring something to it. Diana Spencer's heritage held mysteries concealed across generations, ties to monarchs systematically removed from historical records, and hereditary rights that might have altered England's entire narrative. To grasp this fully, we need to travel beyond the photographers of the 1980s and enter the historic corridors of Althorp House, where Diana spent her youth. Throughout these rooms hang paintings in ornate frames, nobles, ladies of rank, advisors, and military leaders. The Spencer family's claim to aristocracy was far from recent. For 400 years, they occupied positions at Britain's center of influence, accumulating wealth through agricultural enterprise, advancing through strategic unions, and inserting themselves into the network of families connected to royal authority. None of this happened by accident. The Spencers constructed their dynasty with the precision of architects, using partnerships, inherited estates, and matrimonial bonds calculated, not merely for riches but for enduring prominence. Their achievement exceeded that of an ordinary aristocratic household. They created a repository of ancestral lines, most of them connected to England's dominant ruling families. Diana represented the culmination of this multi-generational plan. Few dynasties cast a longer shadow over English history than the Tudors, and Diana's family tree intersects with theirs in remarkable and disputed ways. Henry VIII, notorious for his 6 marriages and perpetual matrimonial upheaval, had no difficulty fathering offspring. His challenge lay in producing recognized heirs. His acknowledged illegitimate son, Henry Fitzroy, was born to his lover, Elizabeth Blount. Contrary to the fate of most children born outside marriage in that era, Fitzroy received public acknowledgement and lavish titles. Though his life ended prematurely, his lineage persisted. Across the generations, his connections permeated aristocratic families that ultimately intersected with the Spencers. Then there's Mary Boleyn, Anne's sister. She also became Henry VII's mistress, and during their liaison, she gave birth to a daughter named Catherine Carey. The official record named Mary's husband, William Carey, as the father. However, the chronology of Catherine's birth has sparked scholarly controversy for hundreds of years. Could she have actually been Henry VII's daughter? If so, Catherine Carey's descendants possessed Tudor heritage, and through successive noble marriages, that heritage entered the Spencer bloodline, suggesting Diana wasn't merely a princess through marriage, but a remote descendant of Henry VIII himself. Diana's ancestry extends beyond the Tudors into one of England's most storied ruling families, the Plantagenets. Her link traces through the Beaufort line, descendants of John of Gaunt, the influential Duke of Lancaster and Edward Effie's son, and his long-term partner, Catherine Swynford. Their offspring ultimately received legal recognition through royal authorization. However, a harsh legal provision excluded them, and their descendants from throne succession. This restriction didn't diminish their power. The Beauforts instead wove themselves throughout the nobility, forming calculated alliances and transmitting Plantagenet heritage into numerous influential families. Over the centuries, their progeny threaded through England's aristocracy, like concealed golden fibers in the nation's historical fabric. One of those fibers traced straight to the Spencers and ultimately to Diana. It's natural to assume the Plantagenets vanished entirely on that violent day in 1485, when Richard III perished at Bosworth Field and the Tudors claimed authority. The truth differs. The dynasty didn't truly end. Their bloodlines went underground through collateral branches, children born outside marriage, and discreet unions that escaped the attention of succession regulations. Diana's heritage connected her to those overlooked streams. She embodied, in essence, a living remnant of the Plantagenets, proof that dynasties don't completely disappear. They endure beneath the surface, biding time until their descendants unwittingly return to history's center stage. As though Tudor and Plantagenet heritage weren't sufficient, Diana's genealogy also intersects with the Stuart dynasty, a house notorious for turmoil, reinstatement and insurrection. Take Charles T, the pleasure-loving king. While he produced no recognized successor, he fathered an impressive number of children through numerous mistresses. Remarkably, he acknowledged several and bestowed aristocratic titles: Dukes of Grafton, St. Albans, Richmond, among others. These illegitimate yet influential descendants didn't disappear. They integrated into the aristocracy, their bloodlines spreading through families that would influence Britain for generations. Eventually, those lines merged with others until connecting with the Spencers. Diana therefore inherited the lineage of a monarch who, despite officially leaving no throne successors, unofficially populated Britain's noble ranks. Her Stuart tie extends further. James II, Charles II's brother, had children with his companion Arabella Churchill, the sister of John Churchill, the renowned Duke of Marlborough. Arabella's descendants entered noble houses that subsequently connected with the Spencers. This meant Diana's ancestry absorbed another monarch's heritage, transmitted outside legitimate succession channels, but maintained through deliberately selected partnerships. The cumulative effect is remarkable. Diana's heritage wasn't a solitary golden strand extending back to one monarch. It formed an entire web of connections: Tudor, Plantagenet, Stuart, interlacing across time until converging within her. One might wonder, was this purely coincidental? Did the Spencers randomly marry into families saturated with royal blood, or was something more intentional happening? Examining their history reveals a pattern. Historical documents and marriage agreements indicate the Spencers possessed an extraordinary talent for selecting alliances that introduced royal connections. Across centuries, they married daughters of royal mistresses, sons of recognized illegitimate princes, and heirs from dissolved or contested marriages. It appears they were accumulating dynastic fragments, portions of royal lineages dismissed by law, but preserved in blood. While other noble families occasionally pursued similar connections, the Spencers did so systematically. Each generation seemed to introduce another strand of royal DNA until their family tree resembled a genealogical archive of the English monarchy. When Diana arrived in 1961, the Spencers had achieved something exceptional. They weren't monarchs, yet they embodied the essence of royalty. They wore no crowns, yet their bloodlines contained remnants of virtually every dynasty that had governed England. Essentially, the Spencers became an alternative royal line, a family that never occupied the throne but preserved its essence across time, anticipating history's eventual return. The narrative extends beyond England. Through colonial marriages and distant relatives, Diana's broader ancestry connects her, albeit tenuously, to America's founding generation and early chief executives. George Washington, John Adams, and John Quincy Adams appear in genealogical records linking English aristocracy to New World leadership. Whether these connections are accepted as fact or family mythology, they illuminate something larger. English aristocratic bloodlines, meticulously maintained for centuries, quietly influenced authority not only in Britain but throughout the Atlantic sphere. When Diana entered St. Paul's Cathedral in 1981, the media narrative focused on one angle: an ordinary woman marrying royalty. But the underlying reality was reversed. Diana brought with her a heritage the Windsors urgently required. The Windsor dynasty, originally Germanic, had reinvented itself during the First World War to appear more authentically English. By the late 20th century, its bloodlines had become limited, carefully controlled through generations of internal marriages. Diana represented something fundamentally different. She introduced centuries of English ancestry, Tudor and Plantagenet remnants, Stuart entanglements, and a genealogical depth the Windsors couldn't claim. Her marriage transcended romance. It represented history correcting itself, separated bloodlines reuniting with the throne after centuries of division. Diana's story doesn't conclude with her. Her sons William and Harry embody this ancestral reunion. They don't simply carry Windsor heritage. They possess Tudor blood, Stuart blood, Plantagenet traces, and the characteristics of royal companions whose offspring were barred from succession. When William assumes the throne, he'll become the first monarch in centuries to unite legitimate succession with the overlooked bloodlines of kings, excluded through politics, controversy, or legal restriction. Through him, the monarchy recovers dynasties it believed permanently lost. Yet the ultimate paradox remains. Diana never fully grasped the historical weight she brought to the world. She became the people's princess, the fairy tale bride, the humanitarian who shattered conventions. But coursing through her veins flowed a millennium of history, the victories, scandals, and secrets of England's royal heritage. Her death triggered mourning for a human tragedy. But at a more profound level, the nation may have been lamenting something additional. the abrupt loss of the woman who personified England's most ancient bloodlines. Diana Spencer wasn't the commoner the palace portrayed. She served as the hereditary conduit between medieval and contemporary eras, between the Tudors, Plantagenets, Stuarts and Windsors. Her legacy persists not merely in collective memory, but in the bloodlines of future monarchs. Diana's narrative exposes a truth the monarchy preferred to conceal. The outsider bride actually embodied the very heritage the Windsors most desperately needed. Through her, ancient dynasties re-entered Buckingham Palace. Through her sons, history will rule once more.